So, everyone, thanks for joining us for episode 68 of Bottoms Up Live. And perfect timing. Nick's just stuffing his face.
Hey, I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
So tonight we go to, we're still on the series of relationships. And when it comes to relationships and across all cultures, food plays such an important part of building relationships. And I realized, we had quite an attendance, during Nick and I's dinner tonight. And thanks for watching us eat.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Really appreciate it.
So let's talk about food tonight. So, Nick, what is your favorite thing to eat?
Oh, man, that really depends on what mood I'm in, right? You and I have pretty similar backgrounds that, we both cooked professionally. And if you were to ask me when I cooked in a restaurant, actually what my favorite food is probably a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? Because you get tired of all the steaks, all the rich food, all the butter. At least I did. So when I was in a restaurant, it's something simple, right? I don't want anything that I can make that's there. And my go-to now is probably Mexican food. I really enjoy it, being half Mexican. It's something I like to do. And here in the DC area, we don't have a ton of, Mexicans here. So if I want decent Mexican food, I normally have to make it myself. What about you?
So for me, I'm a big seafood person. So I love good quality seafood. But, I'm Asian. So I love Asian cuisine. So almost every kind of Asian cuisine. So it just really depends. But I love good, like Dungeness crab, lobster, anything like that. Yep. And for me, so I own a restaurant for about, 4 or 5 years, and we had steak. So during that time, I was just like Nick. I would go next door to Burger King when I had steak at the restaurant, and I wouldn't eat it because you get tired of it when you have access to it daily, or you're cooking it. Some of the stuff, when I smell it, I don't even want to eat it.
So when I was cooking a steak, so I grilled my steak, and I just had instant flashbacks of having a reel full of tickets on a Saturday night and then going, okay, this is, because, most of us line cooks, and, if you cooked anything on a grill, you set up your grill, you have your hottest side to your coolest side, and that's how you kind of keep track of everything. And literally I just had flashbacks of going, okay, here's my medium, my rare to medium rare, all the way to the side where it's well done, right? You got the grill super hot on one side and kind of cooler as you get to the other. So it's really, when I see Xiao there mentioning dim sum, man, really want some dim sum, man.
Yes, we're definitely going to grab some dim sum when you're back in KC. So, yeah, it's crazy because, there's certain things too. Every time I smell beer, because we have bar as well, I just start thinking about the dirty bar at night when you have to clean it up.
And I feel that because literally last night. So I don't know if it was us doing this about this food, but I had a dream last night that I was working in a restaurant again, and I was a prep cook, and I didn't finish my prep sheets, and like I was making this cake, and I forgot to make it, and the restaurant was closed, and I'm like, what am I doing? And I don't know if it was just this whole food episode that triggered that response or something, that dream. It's really odd. Um, and I did it for a lot of years, like you did too. So it shaped a lot of my professional beliefs and stuff. But yeah, so it's just a weird random thing that happened.
Yep. Shao says she worked at a sushi restaurant. So, oh man, I love good sushi as well, man.
Thanks for hanging, Kelsey.
Yeah. Looks like Jackie's on here. There's so many of our LinkedIn friends all hopping on. Thank you. So, with the audience, feel free comment. What's your favorite food or any restaurant stories that you have? Feel free to share. We would love that. Justin Manning, his comment here. People's definition of food is generally culturally appropriate thinking without judgment. Is there a difference between eating cow versus eating dog? Ooh.
That's a great point. And I see he's a vegan too. And his tagline, nothing against vegans. So it's one of those things, that I understand people have different viewpoints of what they eat. And, I respect that. I'm not like a lot of other people who are chefs when you get the vegan come in and you're like, oh my God. To me, I always enjoyed that challenge. And understand that culturally there's a difference between what's acceptable that people eat and what's not acceptable, right? And here stateside, we don't eat, like, for example, horse. And I know horse meat's pretty popular in Europe, that people eat that. So a lot of it's just different cultures and opinions. And I know Asia, like bugs and insects are pretty popular too, especially in Thailand area and Cambodia and all that. So I completely get that.
No, it's unique. I think every culture, even I think one time, Nick, you and I talk about barbecue, right? Like every culture has their own unique way of even grilling, on the fire, cooking food on the fire. And I think that's what makes eating so unique when it comes to relationships. Because a lot of times, when you first meet a friend, what do? You ask them, hey, you want to meet at a restaurant? You don't usually invite them straight to your house, and, it starts with food. So I think this show being bottoms up perspective, right? I think there's so many ways to look at food. There's so many perspective at look at cuisine, period. One thing might fit one person, but it might not be appetizing to someone else, right? So
I'm trying not to chew on the steak because you can probably hear that while I'm eating here. But no, I completely get that. And like I said, when you work in restaurants, there's that viewpoint against vegans specifically, right? When you're chefs or people like, oh, a vegan comes in, like, what, go eat a salad somewhere, right? But I always enjoyed the special orders that come in, see if I could do something with seitan or do something with quinoa, which in the early 2000s, people didn't even know what the heck that was. Do you remember? Like when quinoa bust out, when gangbusters, I was working with it like 10 years before it came out and blew up. So I always enjoyed the challenge. And we're talking about bugs, bugs. I haven't eaten my fair share of bugs. The one thing I'm not huge on is organ meat.
Ooh,
that's just me. Like, working in garde manger for a while, I just had too much thymus gland, too much sweetbreads, too much foie gras, and it's just too much. I just can't do it anymore, man.
Yep. No, I'm not big on organ meats as well. That's tough. Like I never liked liver. Never a big fan. I mean, I haven't had much bugs as well. I think the only bug I've ever eaten was either by accident or a grasshopper. I try like a chocolate covered grasshopper, and I mean, the chocolate was so overwhelming that I really didn't taste the grasshopper except just the texture. So
Yeah. And I mean, I've tasted bugs before too. Um, and it's one of those things where if you can get over your mind of what it is and just eat it, like I always tell people when they try to eat something that they don't normally eat, is if you think about honey, it's bee vomit, right? If you can
oh,
eat bee vomit,
when you
you
say
can
it
try
that
just about
way, it's
anything.
like, oh,
But that's what it is. Oh, and see, Kelsey says cow tongue. I actually love cow tongue. It tastes exactly just like regular beef as long as it's treated right. Um, it's pretty popular in Mexican culture. I don't know if it's too popular. Is it popular in Asian culture at all?
yeah, there's some soups and different things, but I know I love cow tongue taco. It's one of my favorite. So,
Talingua. Yeah, yeah.
hmm yep. So when it comes to food, right, Nick? So what do you look for when you're out and about nowadays?
So for me, I don't know if it's the same for you, but I just don't do fine dining anymore. It's this thing where I'm like, okay, if I want fine dining, I can cook pretty well. My wife can cook pretty well. My wife can probably actually cook better than me now, if I'm being honest. And I enjoy the hole in the walls. People call it ethnic food, but I just want to go to the place, right? If I see a Mexican place, I want to see Mexicans in there. That's my opinion. I'm like, if I don't see them in there, I don't want to go in there. I want to find the hole in wall, the cheap tacos, the cheap, whatever, and get the best meal I've had. And Chicago's a good example of that. They're Chinatown there, right? You go there, it's legit Chinatown. You might pop in a place and nobody speaks English and you're just pointing at a picture and you're like, I hope I like what I just pointed at. So I love doing stuff like that and finding the more smaller places instead of doing, the big names like David Chang's and all these places that do the Jane Beards Awards and all that stuff. What about you, Kevin?
I'm the same way. I think when you work at a restaurant, I grew up around it. So kind of the cost of food and how much markup there is, But I do enjoy like a good restaurant atmosphere. So I would pay money to go to a nice restaurant if I'm out on vacation and I just want to experience the environment. More the environment versus the food. But I'm similar to Nick. I love hole in the wall. I love other culture, like ethnic food, like South Africa, or even vegan. Like I think vegan meals have come such a long way from what it used to be, even 10 years ago. Like it's hard to tell if it's a mushroom or a steak if it's done well. It's crazy. I mean, there's some really good stuff out there. I mean, there's vegan like chicken nuggets that actually taste like chicken, So
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, I don't know, it's something about working in the industry, right? And when I first got out of the industry, my big thing I love to do is go eat brunch. And like as well as I do, is most of the time you're at work and you never did that, right? You're at work in the morning and you're at work on like a Sunday when people go do that. So like to me, it was like this weird thing to go out and eat brunch. It was like, cause I never did it. And it's like, go out and eat the waffles that you're paying like 10 times more than what they cost or whatever. But to me, it was part of the experience because it wasn't something I was able to enjoy. I was always on the other end of it where I was making the omelets or I was making, the pancakes or whatever. So that was one of the big things that I enjoyed when I got out.
So one of the
Not like
things
it's
I still
prison,
enjoy now is I just took my family there the other night, a Waffle House, because after like the restaurants closed, the bars are closed. Like Waffle House was it's either Waffle House or IHOP. It's always open. So I always enjoy going to Waffle House, and I would eat their pork chops and eggs. And
it's
still
simple
like
things. It's
yep.
It's really weird because people who never worked in the industry or weren't a chef, they don't really understand. It's like most of the time for people, it's the simple things, right? If I watch Food Network and excuse me, I'm like I got food in my mouth here, so if it bothers anybody, but one thing that always bothers me is like when I watch Chopped, right? Do you watch that at all? Because my wife and I will watch that, and like, let's say they'll get Kraft macaroni and cheese, and people will be like, "Oh, how dare they put this in there?" I'm like, man, you ate that when you were a kid, and you loved that. And like, I ate that when I was a chef because we had it for kids meals. We always kind of had some hanging around, and like I would eat it every now and then. And then eventually, like I took it where I would grind up Doritos and put them in a ball and then deep fry them. But it's just, it's one of those things. It's the simple things sometimes, man. You get tired of the rich food, like we were talking about earlier, the heavy steaks, and you just get tired of the smell of it too.
And I mean, the power of food is just so amazing. Like, we're talking about how, the smell, the taste of certain food brings back memories. And what's one thing that brings back childhood memories for you, Nick?
So for me, my mom's French Canadian. She used to make these chicken and dumplings, and they're like, so you basically make like a chicken stew, and then you cook these like biscuits on the top. So her dumplings aren't like the southern dumplings where they fall on the bottom. They kind of cook like a biscuit on the top. And for the longest time when I was a kid, that was like my favorite meal. And whenever I'd have my birthday or something like that, I always wanted my mom to make that for me. And even though I can make that now, I still want my mom to make it for me. It's just one of those weird memories where, food and taste and smell has a big, impact on your memory and thoughts. And I can smell something, like you said, you can smell that beer and it just instantly takes you back to a memory. And that's the same way it is for me with that dish.
Yeah. So I think for me is soups, right? So in Asian culture, we drink a lot of different kinds of soups. So my mom always makes like the best where, they cook it, for 8 hours overnight. And there's just variety of like authentic Chinese herbal soups, like chicken. Every once in a while, they have sea urchin, different things like that. And it always just fills up the house with aromas, right? And even till this day, now, like every once in a while, I'll make a good Asian herbal soup, and then everyone else is like, oh, it stinks in the house, But for me, it brings back all the warm, cozy feelings.
I agree with you. There's something about smell, right? Smell and taste just has that opportunity just to bring you back. And I love Adam Fitt's comment here is nobody is above mac and cheese.
And he uses Doritos to crust the steak. That's impressive.
So, I mean, at times, and we're talking about working in the food industry, and I mean, this comment that everyone says when I get out, right? Because it's like, oh, when I get out of jail, right? That's what it kind of seems like. But, it's one of those things where food touches everybody in some shape or form, right? Either, you grew up, your parents could cook or they couldn't. Maybe you grew up on ramen noodles and mac and cheese, but even seeing those things today as an adult will still bring back memories, right? And, me as a kid, we bonded over the dinner table as a family. I don't know if that was the same for you because this predates the internet and, having games and phones, and dinner time was always our time to catch up as a family.
Yeah, that's one of the things for us as a family. Like I always tell Jen, like, hey, when it comes to dinner time, like I want the family to be together, and where we put electronics down, we get them plugged in, and let's just sit and just talk about our day and how everything's going. I think it's missing nowadays in a lot of homes because, mom and dad are busy working. They come back so late. And everyone's just in a rush and a hurry. And that's why fast food has grown, the culture of, hey, let's grab some to go. Everyone eats a different thing at night. Your kids might have McDonald's, mom and dad might have leftovers, and, everyone's doing their own thing. Yep. And I like Eldrick's comment here. I think you're right, Nick. Food can bring out strong memories. Therefore, it's better for young kids to love cheaper food. Otherwise, they will bankrupt their future spouse with their expensive memories.
Well, so I'll make a comment on that. One of a friend of mine, his children, when they were like 8 and 9, loved squid ink pasta. And if you put that in front of me when I was 8 or 9, there is no way and heck that I am taking a bite of squid ink pasta. Even though, have you had that, Kevin? Squid ink pasta?
No, what is it?
So really, is they take squid and the ink sac, and they put it into the pasta. It doesn't really have much of a taste. Doesn't really add much taste to the pasta, but it turns it black. So you can imagine being a kid and seeing some type of pasta and it's black, and you're like, excuse me, I don't know if I'm eating that. But so I'd say, there's different varieties depending on how it goes. And I love seeing, like, you go to a restaurant and seeing a kid, instead of getting mac and cheese, they're going to get like the mahi mahi tacos that are on the menu. I think that's kind of cool. It's just different strokes for different folks, as they say.
Well,
right?
nowadays, I mean, even macaroni and cheese can get pretty fancy, So I was out with my son one night and we're at a nicer restaurant, and I was like, no, you're not getting this mac and cheese. It was like lobster mac and cheese. It was like $22. I was like, nope, we're not getting mac and cheese tonight.
The food cost on that's probably like 8%.
Yeah. And it's probably not even real lobster. Is that the miniature ones? Is it Nangastine or whatever? Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're talking about food costs. I always tell people, I'm like, where a restaurant gets you really is in the drinks, the soft drinks. Because literally, like, you'll get a high yield box of syrup. You'll get, 150 drinks out of it. And you're going to charge $3 for a drink, and it costs you like 45 cents to make it. It's like,
oh, man. Yeah, when you talk about expensive taste, like, I think drinking is like throwing money away when you're doing it out and about. Yeah. So, what Adam say here?
No, I agree. Yeah. Alcohol is expensive. Wine, the general markup is a glass of wine pays for the bottle, right? So you can kind of tell what the bottle costs by what a glass costs.
So Adam's bringing up hamburger helpers. I actually think hamburger helpers were pretty tasty when I was younger. What are your thoughts, Nick?
I liked it. Yeah. I grew up on stuff. I mean,
I still like
my mom.
Campbell beef soup. Is vegetable soup.
Do you?
Yep.
I mean, that one's pretty good. Like I said, my mom, I grew up one of four, and my mom worked at Walmart. So, like, she used to make a ton of stuff. And for the longest time when I was a kid, I didn't know how poor we were. But just like the same thing, like, I had Campbell beef soup. I don't know if I had actual Kraft slice of cheese till maybe I was a teenager at somebody else's house. But it just goes to show that food, can be made into different things. And culturally, it brings people together, right?
Yep.
Sit down at the dinner table, right? And that's why you see politicians, they go to another country, they sit down and have dinner with somebody else, and their customs and their norms, right?
And I mean, food, there's so many ways to be creative, right? So I was with my kids one night, and they just begged me for macaroni and cheese. So I've been sharing with you all about macaroni and cheese and my kids. So that's their meal of choice. They love macaroni and cheese. So everywhere they go, too, they order macaroni and cheese. So I got creative. I had a pack of that Chinese ramen, the spicy one. So I didn't put the spicy sauce. So I just threw literally melted some cheddar cheese and then just melt it and then just mix it with some ramen noodles. And I was like, here's macaroni and cheese.
So that's funny because you were a chef. So you knew that to make a macaroni and cheese, basically you need a bechamel, right? You got to make a bechamel and you got to put a cheese in it. And then you just need some type of noodle. So you can make macaroni and cheese on anything as long as you know your mother sauce is right and what you got to put in it.
Yep.
It's a weird thing. Did you go to culinary school, Kevin? I can't remember. Or did you just kind of start the restaurant and then learn on the fly?
Yeah, I didn't. So my father had culinary training. So I grew up around it. So it was one of those cases. I grew up my whole life in the restaurant industry. And I told myself I'll never work at a restaurant. And then I end up owning one and work for a couple. And it's one of those things you always tell yourself you won't do it. And then you end up doing it, So.
Yeah, I don't know. So I wound up working in restaurants randomly. as a teenager in high school, I worked as a dishwasher 6 days a week because somebody put up a help wanted sign and I wanted a job. And that's literally how I got into restaurants, just by starting washing dishes. So it's a weird thing. It has a way of pulling people in, and one thing I remember is it pulls in a ton of creative people, right? Because the people who are musicians, they need like Thursdays off and like these weird times, and the restaurants can just kind of accommodate that. So I found out that it tended to attract certain type of people.
Mm-hmm. And then the crazy part too is, I think with the restaurant industry, I mean, it's good money when you're young. I mean, it's not bad, like especially as a server.
You're just gonna work, right?
I remember as a server, if you're good at customer service, I think, okay, we got a lot of professionals here as well. We're on LinkedIn. One of the things I always tell Jen, the best way for someone young to learn customer service or sales or upselling is go work at a restaurant and be a server.
Yeah.
I mean, there's days people go treat you like crap and you got to put a smile on your face. And I mean, that's customer service.
I remember being, so the thing that was the saying when I was running restaurants is like the butcher, the baker, the big money maker, but you weren't really the big money maker because when you multiplied the hours, you were there. But like, as as well as I do, is when you're in charge of that stuff, you wind up doing it all, right? Like you might be the general manager or something, but you're going to do everything because at some point somebody's going to call out sick. And I feel like that keeps people kind of grounded sometimes to where their staff is, because you're not like where you could be like a VP of something and highly removed from the front line. You can see the front line every day, so you can see where the struggles and the wins are. So like you, I totally agree. It's something that can be, a good thing for people, especially as they're coming up first job, dishwasher, busser, hostess, right? Because you get those customer service skills, because people complain about their steak being overcooked when they ate the whole thing. And you've got no proof. You've got no proof of that steak was overcooked.
And I think you also,
I don't doubt it was overcooked, but you ate the whole thing. It's like,
and I think you also learn to just, you learn how to get dirty. I mean, and do some of the things you might not want to do, like cleaning the bathroom, and it prepares you so much better for when you go out to the professional world, that your nose is not up in the air. You're never too good to go, let's go mop the floor today, And I am a firm believer in remembering where you came from. And I think a lot of people lose that. They come up through the ranks of the corporate world and they get into this mentality of the who's who, and they forget, hey, remember the time you're in high school and you were just bussing tables? Yeah. I mean, those are the moments that got you there,
And that's why I have the janitor part in my name, because my first ever so the first job I ever had was working on a family farm. So don't count that, right? Because nobody paid me to do that. It's like free child labor. But my first paying job ever was a janitor, right? And I just always think back to the times of when I did that, and the great people I met who did that job, right? And who helped bring me along. And some of them were from the immigrant community, right? And I just always go back and I think of that memory and people helping bring me forward, bring me onto a job, show me how to do everything when I was a 16-year-old kid and everyone else is like 25, 30 or whatever. But they had no problem with me doing it. And we were just all kind of equal. We were all just there to get the job done. And some of the best lessons I ever learned was doing that low job, just like you were saying. You learn how to treat people right, and how people treat you treat them that same way back. It was a great experience.
And you also learn to multitask, right? Because at the restaurant, you can't go, well, I'm just working the fryer tonight. there's gonna be like, hey, Kevin, we need you in the dishes. Go wash some dishes, dude. And it's not like, oh, well, I'm the fryer guy. I can't go wash dishes.
So one thing I highly, highly miss about working in restaurants is the jokes and the straight bluntness, right? Where at 1 second you could literally be cursing each other out, and then you're like, "Hey, Kevin, when are fries gonna be ready for table 8?" It's like nothing happened, right? It's like we're just all in this moment, embracing the suck together, and then the suck is over, and we're just kind of like, "Oh yeah, Kevin," like we completely forgot everything that happened 5 minutes ago, and you just kind of come together to get this task done. Working in restaurants is a really weird thing, and as well as I know is that working a Saturday night, especially if it's like a Mother's Day, is in the stateside. I don't know if it's everywhere else internationally, but you are going to get slammed, man. Like, I don't care if you work at a TGI Fridays, Mother's Day, if it falls on a Saturday, you're going to work hard for probably like 13, 14 hours.
Yep.
And we'll all just be in the suck together, get mad at each other. And then after it's all done, we're all hanging out, at the bar, at the restaurant. Completely cool experience.
And what's cool is like, I love working busy nights because your day goes by so fast.
Yeah.
Like, during a rush, like 4 hours is like, it feels like 30 minutes. And you're done.
It does.
Yep.
I literally, when I work an 8-hour day, I feel like I'm cheating somebody. Like, I don't know, because as well know, it's like the 13, the 14-hour days, the no breaks. That's why a lot of people in restaurants smoke, so they can get breaks. I don't know if people know that, but it's like, a lot of people wind up smoking in restaurants because they can get a break that way. Great for hanging out, Kelsey. Appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things. It's an experience, and I recommend that everybody does if they get a chance to do it. And we went from food to talking about working in restaurants, but that's the way it goes.
Yeah. Hey,
it's a big part of my life and a big part of your life. So yeah.
Hey, for those of you out there, the audience, if you've worked at a restaurant, throw us some emojis, some thumbs up, so we know you've done it. So love to hear, your perspective as well. And yeah, let's go back on the topic of relationships and food. So where was the first place you took your wife to eat, if you remember?
So I started dating my wife when we lived in Florida. I was still working in restaurants. So for people who don't know my backstory, I was a professional chef, and then I got tired of working every day, every holiday, every night, every weekend, and I went back to university. And so when I met my wife, I was finishing my undergrad for my bachelor's degree. I took her to a place in Orlando called Mimi's Cafe, but before we did that, we played putt-putt golf. And that's what I remember, just going out to a restaurant. To me, it was still a weird experience, not because of the date, to go to a restaurant on a Saturday. And then I still remember when I was first dating her, and then the first Valentine's Day we were together, I had to work like 16 hours or something like that. It's like, and then, you have Valentine's Day dinner at like 1 a.m. because that's what you do. It's the next day. And it's a really interesting thing.
It's a different lifestyle for sure. I think for me, the first time I met Jen, period, I think a group of people went out to eat. So, we ate at this Thai restaurant, and my backstory was, I lost my restaurant, right? I ended up, I have a whole story about it. I had a successful restaurant, father got cancer, and I ended up, taking a bankruptcy and pretty much walked away from it. And during that time, that's when I met my wife, and all these people went to this Thai place to eat, and honestly, I wasn't even interested in a relationship or meeting a girl. So I was really just like focusing on my food and just eating. And I think that sparked her interest, because she was the only girl there. And you ladies know how single guys are. So So they were all talking her head off, and then here's this guy that didn't talk and just kept eating his food. So, because I was kind of depressed and not, I wasn't the best, I guess, mental form at the time, and that's how I won my wife over, I guess, over food.
See here, Adam Fitz. I was a line cook at Cracker Barrel. I came for the weed and stayed because all my musician buddies needed shifts. That is the most restaurant comment I have seen here tonight. Yep. That's totally the way it is, right? Where you work in restaurants and you value people who show up over shifts, it doesn't matter what they do as long as they show up to work. You're like, you'll take it.
Even if
that's the most restaurant comment I've seen tonight, Kevin.
I mean,
Adam. Yep.
You get introduced to so much drugs and parties that, you just see all kinds of things when you work in the restaurant industry that you can't even imagine.
Yeah, no, I agree with it. So when I decided I was going to go back to school, the place that I was working at was like, okay, you can't cut down your hours and be management. So I left and I took a prep cook position at a restaurant because I was like, well, I need to go back to school and I need to make sure that that's my number one priority. So I'm here as a prep cook, right? And there's this guy who's a prep cook back there and he's probably like 45, which is ancient in the restaurant industry. If anyone knows anything, right, Kevin? To see a 45-year-old prep or line cook is a rarity. And he's showing me what I need to do to make pizza dough and all the stuff. And he's like, Nick, he's like, the only day I ever took off is when I died. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, when I had my first heart attack, that's the only day I ever took off from here. He's like, I went to the hospital, they discharged me, and then I came back to work the next day. I was like, it's these weird situations that happen in restaurants, but that's a huge memory of me when I go back and I think about working in restaurants of this guy telling me the only day he ever had off was when he died. And he was proud of it.
So Eldrick here, he said, hey, Kevin and Nick, teach us something how to close a deal over a meal.
Well, see, Aldrich's a poet and doesn't know it because closing a deal over a meal, right? So I think when you're doing business over food, it's really helpful to know your audience, and especially if you're dealing internationally with the cultural differences, right? Because there are some cultures where they expect business to be done over food, over social interactions,
and they might not eat meat.
Yeah, and so it's super helpful to know your audience and the culture that they come from, and even if they come from a culture where maybe they don't eat meat, maybe they do. So it helps to do your due diligence ahead of time before you go out to dinner. And I know there's some things like Japanese culture too, business culture. They're expected to go out for drinks after work and do the whole schmoozing thing, and they will hang out forever. So I think it's super helpful to understand who you're doing business with and what their cultural expectations are. And this could be as easy as asking questions when you're in the business meetings before you go to the lunch or the dinner, right? And get to know somebody. Some of the things that we do initially, right? Talk about Kevin, we talk about our wife, we talk about our families, and you can kind of, bring up some personal touch there to kind of figure out where you need to go with that.
But at the end of the day, Aldrich, the key is you get them drunk, and then you bring the contract out and go, just sign the dotted line.
Yeah. And you know what? If like the sake's flowing, the wine's flowing, and people are having fun, there's some cultures where they won't do business with you unless they know you personally, right? And you make that connection. And like we said, food has that way of bringing people together. Just think when you invite people over to your house and you start cooking, everybody winds up in the kitchen, right? Or if you're smoking and grilling something in the backyard, everybody winds up in the backyard. Food just has this human instinct of pulling people around to like what I always like to think it's like you come back to caveman days, right? Everybody gathers around the fire to talk with each other and connect and talk about their day and how things go on a human level.
And what's neat is I think food's so timeless. Like no matter like, social media changes, your technology changes, everything changes, but there's always food culture. Like it just doesn't go away. And I think it's going to stay throughout human history. I mean, you can't talk about relationships without food, period.
No, you can't.
Every friendship, every friend you have, guys out there, besides virtual friends, right? You probably have eaten with them at some point in your life, or even family member.
Well, I've never met you in person, and here we
we're eating.
Had a meal together. We just had a meal together.
Yep. So,
but it's one of those things, food brings people together, right? And I always love experiencing other people's cultures. And like I said, what somebody calls one thing might be something completely different to you, even if you're from the United States, right? What somebody calls a pig in the blanket in Kansas City might be different in Minnesota, right? So, and some of that can stem from the different cultures that, populated the areas initially. So it's a great way to bring people around. Pizza rolls, jeez, I love pizza rolls, man. Yep, the Totino's pizza rolls that will like set your mouth on fire with grease if you bite into them too soon. It's like, yeah.
But, food is such an icebreaker too. I always find it even more awkward if you go meet someone for the first time and it's not over food. It's almost a little even more awkward if, they don't have the personality where they're not outgoing. You can eat with someone that's an introvert and somehow still work your way into a conversation, Yeah. So, I mean, food does that for everyone and we all need it and we all love it. So what Eldrick said here.
Yeah, not true.
I wouldn't like it if you eat dinner for 90 minutes.
Well, there's some cultures where that's expected, right? Like, I know Italian culture is, and Spanish culture from Spain, it's like they start and they eat dinner late, and it's multiple courses, right? So you might have like 10 small courses over a few hours. So it's the cultural thing, right? And understanding what culture you're dealing with, right? You're not going to show up to one of those and expect to be gone in 45 minutes, right? And close a deal. So some of it's just how it goes. LinkedIn user.
It's Beth. So.
Oh, Beth. Okay.
Yep. I like making homemade stromboli with my own homemade sauce. Yep. Delicious. Good stuff. So I'm curious, Eldrick. So Eldrick, what's your favorite dining experience for you?
It's probably gonna be McDonald's. Like let's
Mickey D's.
Yeah, I'm curious if anyone else in the chat, what's your favorite food or dining experience?
Yep.
Especially if you worked in the industry, because like me, like I said, it was like brunch and breakfast. Like I was just huge on that because I could never do that. I was never up for breakfast because I worked till 2 or 3 in the morning, or I worked the Saturday, Sundays for the brunches.
Eldrick says silo fine dining.
That's not my idea of a good time, but hey, whatever works for you, right?
So Eldrick, so are you cooking, or who's cooking the silo fine dining?
I am fine kind of dying ding. Kind of ding. Okay.
Silo, I am fine kind of ding.
I mean, so fine dining can be experience, right? And like for me and you, we come from it from a different perspective because we worked it. So I can understand where the appeal is for some people, right? Because it's an experience, right? You go to like a Morimoto's or something like that where you can drop $500 pretty late in 10 minutes, and it's an experience, right? But for us, it's kind of like we've seen how the bread's made, and it's like, well, I know the $500 meal, the line cook's making like $15 an hour. So it's like I'm not doing that because Morimoto's like in LA. He's not here, you know? So I think some of it's just like the whole thing. You've seen how the sausage is made, so you're not as big on it. At least it is for me.
Like for me, I know it's not healthy, but I like a good pack of ramen noodles. Surprisingly, late at night, just ramen noodles. I like to throw like some veggies in there, maybe an egg, and like I never get the point. Like we have this ramen culture in the U.S. today, right? Everyone's like caught up in this ramen stuff, and it's hard to find a quality ramen restaurant in the US. So I can't see paying $20 for a bowl of ramen. I still have a hard time doing that. So to me, I rather have my 95 cents a pack. And then you just spice it up with some good beef or good seafood, throw it in there, and there you go.
No, I agree with you. Adam, Brazilian steakhouses. Yes.
Ooh, that's a yes.
The Fogo de Chao or the Texas de Brazil or whichever one you have around you. If you've never experienced a Brazilian steakhouse, that you gotta do that.
Now, Brazilian steakhouse, now to me that's worth it. Because I can go all in and really spend my hour and just go all out, man. I usually feel sick afterwards, but
well, it's just like if you flip that. So like people who aren't aware, so Brazilian steakhouse is normally like you get like access to like salad and different stuff, but then the big draw is the meat, right? And you have this like little cylinder you put on your table, and it has a yellow or it's green and a red, right? On top and bottom. And when you flip it over green, people will just come at you with swarms of meat. And they're like, you want this? Like, do you want this? Like what? Like, how done do you want this? And it is just full, like right there, the meat sweats, right? It's like one of those things where it's if you've got one in your area, you need to go check it out because it is its own experience. And I've yet to find something else that's pretty similar to that. You just go, you flip the thing over, and you pick your meat, right? Texas de Brazil. Yeah, that's pretty popular in the South. I don't know where else it is in the States, but I know Fogo de Chao is pretty big too.
Yeah, I love Fogo. So, and the trick at Fogo is their salad bar is also pretty good too. So, the key is to go there and not fill yourself up with the salad stuff and just eat the meat.
Okay, so everyone is in restaurants. Okay, so the buffet line is always set up with the protein at the end.
Yep.
And that's intentional because we want you to fill up your plate before you get to the protein. So if you want to go against the grain, go from the back to the front.
That's right. You don't want to fill yourself up with all the carbs and the cheap stuff. All the bread, Eldrick. You don't want to fill yourself up with the cheap bread.
No, maybe he's a McGriddle guy. I know he's a McDonald's guy. Maybe he's a McGriddle guy. And he wants all those carbs,
Yeah. Oh, man. And what's neat is like you can have so much different conversations. Just like tonight, right? We're all talking because we all have so much experiences with food. Every person here, I know Eldrick has a hidden favorite. He's just not telling us, So,
and I love that question you asked me about what's your favorite dish, right? Because it's different for everybody. Even if we grew up across the street from each other, Kevin, it's completely different, right? With your background and mine, we would have two completely different favorite dishes. And I always thought it would be kind of cool to make a cookbook with a compilation of, like 15 of your best friends, like go-to dinner meals, right? When you invite friends over for meals, what is your go-to like apps, mains and desserts, and just have like a book where it's like those different things. And like for you, you'd probably come up. I don't know, it might be Cajun. You owned a
Yep.
Cajun restaurant, so you could surprise me, and like I'd probably be like Ed Touffet for like a main, and like boudin or some kind of boudin sausage for like a starter. Like you could surprise me. So I always think it'd be cool to see what everybody's go to like throw down meal is when you invite friends over.
No, that's a great idea. So Eldridge says spicy veggies.
But I
Man, I'm a
like,
big fan of
yeah.
kimchi. So I think kimchi, I
Oh
mean,
god, I
there's
love
so
Korean
many
food,
ways
man.
to do kimchi. Like some people do it with radishes, there's broccoli kimchi. I'm a big fan of kimchi. The different types of cabbages. Some people do it even with, I seen it done in bok choy, kale. I mean, it's amazing.
I love
Yeah.
kimchi. So I love Korean food just in general. Um, and literally like one of the last places I ate at before the pandemic started was a Korean barbecue. And through the whole pandemic, through like most of us like, I just want to eat a Korean barbecue. But as well as I know, is like it's the tables close together and they throw the meat. Like there's no there's no way that's happening in a pandemic. But
So
it's one of the things I've missed.
between Fogo and Korean barbecue, I think it's a close tie for me
That's a
because
tie.
I don't know where you're at in DC. I know we have like the all you can eat Korean barbecue,
Yeah, we
and
have
it's
those here.
very similar. You can kind of pick your meat, and they bring it to your table, and then you and your friends or your family, you can just cook it on this open fire, right? And it's unlimited, so you pay maybe $20, and it's all you can eat. And
I think you know what? I think I might take Korean barbecue over Brazilian steakhouse. That's just me. It's the experience of being able to sit there and throw the meat on there and flip him back and forth. It kind of takes me back to like being at your home and grilling out in the back, and everyone's kind of hanging out while you're grilling. So to me, it's maybe not so much the food itself as it is the experience.
yep, the experience. And experience plays such a big part in eating, period. uh and food culture is all about experience, and that's why, think about it, YouTubers, it all started with food. Like the biggest influencers on social media started with food. If you
Yeah,
go
and
all the way back to like MySpace days, it wasn't like LinkedIn, like professional gurus teaching you how to do things. It was simply some guy got their phone or a camera and started cooking at his home.
yeah, and so the one thing I will say too is that as stuff has become more accessible, I feel like people maybe I'm just guessing wrong, right? People feel like they need to be able to cook as well as Jeffrey Scarrian, or like people see on Food Network Bobby Flay. But I've ate at Bobby Flay's restaurant, and I was like, I'm not impressed. So it's one of those things. Like, don't be afraid of what you see on TV. Just try. Just start, right? And it's about understanding flavor combinations and the different things that go together. And as well as I know is that I've cooked with people professionally who are better than anybody I've ever seen on TV, and they will never get a lick of ounce on TV because they don't have that personality. Um, it's just one of those things. Just try, just start, right? Everybody starts somewhere. Your first few meals are gonna suck, right? But think back to the first time you start doing anything, you suck at it, right? And then eventually you kind of figure it out as you go along. And I would say just try, right?
Yep.
Just start somewhere.
And Teresa, the tip to cooking good rice is buying you a good rice cooker.
Every Asian I've known has said that to me. It's like, nah, how do you cook rice? A rice cooker.
I think most Asians today, the millennials, I don't think we know how to cook rice with just like a normal pot. I mean, I do, but I think a lot of people, even Asians, as much rice as we eat, I've met so many Asians that don't know how to cook rice without a rice cooker. I don't know if Eldrick knows how to cook rice with just a pan. So
That's one of
tell
my
me
favorite
wrong,
things.
Aldrich.
Like, it's really weird. Like, you go to Chinese restaurant here in the stateside, and I understand it's not Chinese food, right? It's Americanized Chinese food, just like Mexican food here is Americanized. But I love the plain white rice. I don't know what it is about it, but I like. It's just kind of like this shapeless, formless thing, and you can throw whatever on it, and it becomes a part of whatever it is that you're eating.
Dude,
Um,
like
it's like a blank canvas, right?
my
You just
son,
throw whatever you want on it.
my youngest son can eat macaroni and cheese or just white rice.
What kind of rice though? Like,
Like
so I
just
know it's
steamed
kind of
rice,
specific.
flat out
Okay.
rice. And then Jen, my wife, like she does something interesting to me, So growing up, I live with Asian parents, so we're like traditional Asian food. And Jen puts like it's like no in our culture, right? She puts like butter and milk and mixes her rice up and then eats it just like that. And I'm like, oh, that's disgusting.
It's this thing I always used to use called rice pudding. Like, have you ever made that with
Yep.
basically, you just make like a custard and you throw the rice in it. I always used to do that with leftover, rice from Chinese food. But like you said, it's all there. Look at Jacob, his horns, pancake, pretzel, cheese, bacon, burger, steak. It's like, yeah, see, he shows up. But it's, food just can be awesome, bring people together. And, it's one of those things. We all have our favorite dishes, and everybody culture is different. Even if you come from the same culture, your home's different from one home to the next. I
Yep.
love
Adam said he likes jasmine rice. I'm a huge jasmine rice fan, man. It just has the aromas, is perfect. Like for me, it's so weird. So pretty much throughout my childhood, I grew up like super Asian, my parents. So really, in my mind, I always thought there was just long grain white rice, until I probably like high school freshman year. And I was like, oh my, there's other variety of rice, Like there's so many types of rice. There's like brown rice. There's, like when
wild
you guys
rice.
brought up Indian food, right? They have a different
Yeah.
kind of grain, There's just a wild rice and just
Theirs
rice
is
alone.
basmati, right?
Yep,
Basmati. That's what
basmati.
they use.
Yep,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Panda Express. Okay.
Jacob said he likes Panda Express.
Hey, I like
Oh,
Panda Express when I was a kid, hanging out at the mall. That's where you go. But yeah,
that's where I'm taking Eldrick if he ever visits Kansas City.
He's gonna be like, "What is this abomination?"
Eldrick's gonna forget about McDonald's, man. He's gonna go Panda Express.
Kirsten, what's going on? Good to see you. Thanks for hanging out.
Yep. So Teresa said, Mitch Herbert said, what else can you eat 100 pieces of?
Reese's Pieces, M&Ms.
I want snacks now.
You missed it earlier where we were just eating for a few minutes. But so the weird thing is that, we're talking about doing this. So it's like, for me, a guilty pleasure is always steak frites, right? It's the Belgium dish. And if you go to a Belgian restaurant, it's normally like a very fatty steak, right? A fatty New York strip or a fatty ribeye with like a veal demi-glace sauce, and then you dip your fries in it. And which I didn't do that because I don't have any demi-glace just hanging around. I mean, it's like I don't make that unless I'm in a restaurant. But that's one of my guilty pleasures. I don't. What's your guilty food pleasure, Kevin?
Ooh, for me, it's actually, nowadays everyone says carbs is horrible for you. I am a sucker for good pastry.
Oh, I love pastry,
Like
especially
European pastry, Korean pastry, like good, solid pastry. Like I can eat bread all day long.
Oh, I can too. And so the weirdest thing is I've had a hard time in the DEC area finding a true croissant because, as well as I know, finding real puff pastry is difficult. And you can tell when someone buys the puff pastry from Cisco and makes it. as opposed to when somebody's actually layered all the butter in and made it. Finding a good puff pastry is difficult. Finding a real croissant is difficult. And when you find one, the pain au chocolat, the croissant that just has chocolate inside of it, man, it's like, dude, give me 5 of those with a cup of coffee.
And even like a good apple pie. I'm a sucker for that too.
Geez. Yeah.
Man, like homemade quality apple pie with fresh apples and a scoop of like homemade ice cream.
So that's my wife's aunt who just passed away a few days ago, unfortunately. She would make apple pies with lard. And this is one of those things, like making a pie with lard as opposed to the Crisco shortening is a night and day difference. Like just having that apple pie that has that lard fat in it, it's completely different with the enclosed pie crust, not the lattice crust, which if anyone's talking, it's like that little crust like that. But this one's fully covered and you just cut the slice so it can breathe, man. And that's like you throw a scoop of vanilla ice cream on that thing, man. It's like just give me a whole pie with ice cream.
So while we're talking pastries, let's talk a little about coffee culture. So are you a coffee drinker?
I am a coffee drinker. I used to not be as picky as I am now. So like in the restaurant days, it's like, oh, whatever coffee we have that comes in, just throw it in the pot and give it to me. You're like, I just need caffeine, because that's before Monster energy drinks and all that stuff. But so now, I love a good latte or a good espresso. I generally will just drink it with milk in it. I don't put sugar in it. I just want that kind of combination of like the frothy milk with the bitter coffee itself.
Yep, that's how I am. So what are your thoughts of cold brew?
Of what?
Cold brew coffee.
Cold brew? I like my coffee hot. My wife's a huge cold coffee drinker, but I want a hot. I don't mind cold brew, but there's something for me, it's like, it's an experience, right? You sit down, you have your coffee, and you have your pastry. Very European, but it's just one of those things. I love having the pastry with the hot coffee and just having that experience. And Usama there, I think he's a Turkish coffee drinker. It's just one of those things, having that super bitter thing and having something sweet to go with it.
I'm the same way. I love me a bitter cup of coffee. I don't mind a froth. That's why I'm the same way. I love lattes. And if you have a good piece of pastry to go with the coffee, and that's where the sweet comes in.
Yeah. So one of my favorite pastries is the Madeleine. You know what I'm talking about? It's the little pastry from France, and it's got like the little shell shape. And when you have those things, and they've got to be made that day, or else the next day they're not as quite as crispy on the outside. But when you have those with a cup of coffee, that's just perfect for me. I'm like, that'd be like one of my perfect breakfasts.
So what's your thought on Starbucks?
So before Starbucks came along, it was hard to find a decent espresso or a cup of coffee. It just didn't exist, right? And here in Kansas City, I was on the East Coast. I don't know if it was any different, before Starbucks blew up, but I don't mind Starbucks coffee. I actually feel like their regular coffee tastes burnt to me. But if I'm looking for decent coffee and I'm somewhere like the middle of nowhere driving to somewhere, I'll stop and I'll get that cup. But I love finding the mom and pop shop where it's just like someone who's a barista and, finding what they have, because there's all kinds of cool stuff out there. I like going out of my way and visiting the stuff that's probably not the chain restaurants.
Yep, I think the local coffee spots are awesome. I actually like Starbucks. I mean, I think they purposely burnt the coffee a little bit. I think that's what makes it distinguished.
It is on the hot side. Yeah.
Because I taste the burnt as well. But I think that's what makes it kind of distinguish. But the only thing I like at Starbucks is really just their soy latte, because the soy milk they use is very different. I think it has Obviously it has sugar in it, and I think it just goes well with the burnt coffee.
Yeah, I mean, that's that's good too. And one of my favorite methods to get coffee too is a French press. A friend of mine who lives in DC, and I trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with him. He actually started roasting coffee. So most of the coffee I get now is actually from him, and I actually love a French press coffee.
Ooh, French
You
press.
just throw it in there and you let it sit for a few minutes, and you push it down, and you get like 20 times the caffeine.
Yeah.
It's like a big hit for your money, and it's one of those things. Like I said, man, a nice Madeline and a cup of coffee, and I'm set, man.
So you saw him and said, "I love
Oh,
making
I love
scones
scones too,
too,
man.
and homemade cookies for tea or coffee." Yes, sir. Good stuff.
So one of the things, have you been to Australia?
I have not.
So if you've never been, so when I went there, I didn't understand that coffee culture is really big there. And they pick up a lot from the British culture, but they pick up even more from the Italian culture because they had a huge immigration of Italians when they wanted to uh, obviously like build a country and build infrastructure. So they are huge on like legit coffee there, and it really surprised me when I was there. You go there and like it's this mix of like Italian with like French pastries, and like someone's working one of those huge like espresso machines when you order coffee, and Starbucks is like almost nowhere to be found.
Really, in
It's
Australia?
Yeah, and it's this really weird thing where you wouldn't think it would be, but it's huge. And like I said, they also have this huge Italian food scene, which was pretty good, which surprised me. So if you ever get the chance to go, just be ready to experience some great coffee shops and some good Italian food.
So I know Eldrick brought up earlier that, hey, let's talk business. And it's funny because we're talking about food and all this taste and smells. And from a business point of view, it's interesting how much business is done over food in the business scene. I mean, how many? Okay, prior to COVID, how often instead of, hey, let's go do a Zoom call, that you would tell someone to meet you and have coffee or go have lunch?
Yeah, so it's definitely more often that would have coffee or lunch over Zoom, and some of that was I was live streaming anyways before
Mm-hmm.
COVID. So I was used to being on Zoom and being on that, but most other people were not. So most of the things would be locally, and that's one of the great things I feel like that's come out of this is that more people are willing to hop on a Zoom and meet somebody. And like I
Yeah.
said before this, it was more always in person, right?
Yeah, and I looked at my budget, as a company. So I own a digital marketing agency now, and the amount we spend on like
Entertainment's
just
gone way down.
entertainment and like coffee meetings just to meet, right? And it's not always guarantee a partnership or a deal. Like I bought a lot of coffees, in 2018 and 2017. And then you start looking at, even internally, every time you have a lunch and learn, or, it's just become part of our business culture where people bring in like salesmen. Like even when I was in my corporate job, I always look forward to the salesman visit, like when the salespeople visit, because even if I'm not buying something, I'm gonna get their free meal. So, I look forward to bring bagels, and it's also a good excuse to leave the office.
Yeah,
For you know.
and like I agree with you. Like meeting people in person. I mean, there's still no replacement for that. Um, and coffee or lunch is a good way because it's not like a huge commitment, like where you go out to dinner and then sometimes people are like, oh, well, let's go grab a drink here. So it can wind up being a longer engagement. So Adam, rack up those tax deductions. um,
Exactly.
yeah,
So
but so I can believe your T&E budget went way down once the pandemic happened because like you weren't entertaining as much as clients before as you were now.
so let's talk a little about the business culture of eating, right? So if your boss is taking you out, so or you're going out with, you're a new employee, you just do you what when your employer allows you to kind of pick whatever you want, do you pick the most expensive item, the cheapest item, or the middle? What would you say is the proper way of selecting your meal?
So, okay, so we're talking about there's different ways to look at this. Okay, so if you're traveling by yourself and you're on business, like let's say you're going to a conference, but you're not entertaining clients, you're just eating by yourself, I would not pick the most expensive thing, right? And that's just me. I'm like, I'll stop at Panda Express as Jacob popped in here. If I'm eating by myself and I'm just on a business trip, I'm gonna stop at whatever's quick, whatever's easy. I'm not gonna spend the money. If I'm entertaining a client, I might only get a medium thing. If my boss is there, my boss orders the highest thing on the menu, then I'm like, okay, well, I got a threshold that I can pick from. But a lot of times, since I worked in the restaurant, I won't pick the most expensive thing anyways, because the cheapness in me comes here's like, I know what this food cost is at. Like at most this food cost is at 30%. So like he's not even spending anywhere near that much on that. So maybe I'm not the gauge for that perfectly. So like for me, it would depend, right? I would let a client pick the most expensive thing, but it wouldn't mean that I would do that.
So you saw him say, I picked the cheapest thing as a model of respect and dignity. I would agree.
What about you? Like, what do you do as an agency owner? Like, yeah. I mean, do you feel? I mean, even though you own,
it's funny because one of my things is when I have a new team member, I always like to take them to lunch, like lunch on me, because I do have to say the meal that they choose does give me a foretell of who they are eventually. I don't know how to say it. And my wife and I were just talking about that. It's kind of funny. I do somewhat agree with Usama because you'll see people that will order the most expensive thing on the menu. And from experience, and it's not judging anyone, you usually have less of a team player, on your team. And then there's people that are always like, why don't you go ahead and order first? And then they, and you can tell they're just respectful. And then they judge by what meal I buy. And then they might go, a few dollars below or, the same thing I order, So I do think it's a sign of respect in a way. And for me, you can learn a lot even from like when you go out and buy a client meal or whatever, by what they order, so you can kind of scale who they are as a person.
And yeah. I mean, that's interesting too. And that brings another thing we're talking about business lunches too is alcohol, right? You go out to a business lunch and it's 12:30, or is everybody ordering alcohol? Are you the one out? And I feel like that's always the thing too that's hard to figure out, right? And some of that depends on company culture or just culture in general. So I feel like that's always one of the hard things to figure out.
Yep. And I think like with food culture and just in business, you can tell a lot from the way people eat, the way they even approach their food. I mean, you can learn a lot about someone, I have met people that are very particular and you can tell, they eat the same thing every day. I had a guy that, used to work for me and I love him to death. And I mean, he ate at the same time every single day and it's the exact same thing. And when it comes to work, he was the exact same way. Like he was always like he had his whole routine down like to a science. He would like something's really wrong with him if he shows up late. Like he was always on the dot and he would leave on the dot and he was very particular and he did the exact same routine on a daily basis. And we always wonder, like, how do you do that? Like, he was super disciplined, you know? And so, like, you can tell so much from food. And I think that's why a lot of cultures, when it comes to business relationship, I know it's huge in the Asian culture, is taking your clients to lunch. Because
Mhm.
in Asian culture, if you watch enough even Korean series, um, they're actually reading you. They're like trying to judge like the positioning and the proposal and where this is going. I mean, it's like dating a girl. You can tell a
Yeah.
lot during that meal.
You're trying to figure out who the decision maker is, right? Who is the decision maker here? And we're going to find this out at
Yep.
this business lunch. Yeah.
Yep. And it all starts, eating out food, and then it leads to other things, right? Oh, I like what Jen said here. When you get back on the
You can't
topic of
stop
food,
this.
you can't stop this. And then Usama said, "Food is an international language."
I agree. We all got to eat, right? It's something, right? You got to eat something, right?
You gotta eat something. So, what is the worst thing you've ever eaten?
Oh man, shad roe. Shad roe. Do you know what that is?
I don't even know what that is.
Okay. So you know what a roe is, right? It's
Uh-huh.
fish eggs.
Yep.
So shad roe is like this huge so like when they harvest the roe out of this fish, they harvest it like in its jeez, I don't even know, is it uterus or something?
Oh,
Like I'm probably butchering this, and they leave it in this big sack, and like you just like it's gross. Like I just like no, that's the worst thing I've ever ate, and it goes against my whole thing of like like eating not eating organ meat. I've just had too much of it. I'm done. What about you?
whew, for me, I don't know. I mean, that's a hard one. Hmm. I am not very big on same thing, organ meat, any kind of organ meat. Just I'm a texture guy. So if the texture's not good, I have a very hard time eating it.
I get that because a lot of organ meat is kind of like chewy or like soft. The texture can be off putting on it. Yeah, I
And,
get that.
and also anything that's kind of gamey,
Oh,
So
I
one of the
love
things
gamey.
I could
It depends.
what's the so in Asian cultures there's these duck eggs and it's like a baby duck. I think that's one of the worst things I ever eaten. I literally like it.
I don't think I would eat that, but
Yeah.
I might try it. But yeah,
So my dad used to eat those things, and he gave one to me, and when I saw that little bird, I couldn't do it.
he's like, "What happened to my son? He's too American."
Yep, exactly. So my wife said, "Does a girl order a salad or do they order a steak?"
The answer is they order both, Jen.
Yep, they do.
Yeah, don't be afraid. Order the salad. And
So
the
Adam
steak.
said his
Order
was
both.
fermented tofu.
That's rough too.
That is rough.
That is rough. Yeah.
Yep. It's a distinguished taste. I know a lot of Asians love fermented tofu.
I know tofu in general is big in Asian culture.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
okay, so at least until you get to know a guy, how do you order? Follow their lead. I guess I just didn't.
no, you do you, Jen. You do you. That's what I say.
Yep.
What
Nowadays, I tell her you do the cheapest thing on the menu.
And then you order the steak.
And then I ordered a steak. Yeah. So you saw him say he's allergic to crab and lobster. And then he said, "Yep,
Oh,
Beth,
Beth,
have a great night."
Thanks for hanging. Have a good night.
Eldridge said, "I went for a poo." You guys are still.
We're definitely not talking about poo. So,
Oh, that's hilarious. Oh man. Oh man, it was a fun night, man. It's crazy. See, when you talk about food, it just draws a natural audience. I think this is one of my best live shows. I mean, we maintain probably 10, 15 people the consistently the whole night, you
Well, for
know.
10 minutes that we were just eating. So
I know 10 minutes of it we're just eating. We're talking
yeah.
about food and I mean I mean content. When it comes to content, like for me, when I scroll through, especially like LinkedIn, because most of my followers are on LinkedIn, I love a good food pic because I get so tired of all the business stuff.
I
Like,
do too.
like I'm so exhausted from it. Like I don't even want to write business content because I'm like, I am just drained. It's like nowadays it seems like everyone's an expert, and it's like, great, you're great at your craft. Good to know. And if I want to learn something, I'll Google it. You know, I don't need to go on LinkedIn and read your content. So, so for me, it's great to see a nice dish of food. What are you eating on the weekend? You know, and therefore, you know, even for live shows, you know, and then the mental health stuff too. Like, I know there's a lot of mental health things, but there's a lot. Like nowadays, it went almost from like LinkedIn coaching to all of a sudden mental health therapists, coaches, and everyone's trying to help someone to get healthier. But before I end tonight, one of the things that helps your mind is food. Doesn't matter if you're depressed, you're sad, just go eat. You know,
Yeah.
and I think there's a reason why in the US, you know, I think every prison does this. Before death row, they let you choose your last meal. So,
That's insane to think, right? Like I mean, just like, what do you want to eat before you die? And I don't know if I could pick. I don't know if I could pick like this meal. And I know for death row in the states, it called, you know, comes to some ultimate end, and they let family come and all this stuff before everything goes down. But it's just crazy to think. Like you just brought that up, and never occurred to me till right now.
no, and it's crazy too. I was talking friends of mine who are doctors and stuff and emergency room and they tell me that like a lot of people before they die, they ask for their loved ones or even the nurses to bring their favorite food. Isn't
Hmm.
that crazy to think about?
That's crazy. Yeah,
But, yep.
has a special, that sense of taste and sense of smell has a special connection to bring people back to memories, I think.
Aldrich, depress, go eat, stand on your weighing machine, depress, go eat, rinse, wash, repeat. Now, well, thank you everyone for joining us all night. We pretty much just talk about food, and when it comes to relationships, I think food is a big part of it. It's a great icebreaker. No matter if it's business relationships, dating someone, um, you know, everyone has a love hate relationship with food, and but food is what fuels us every single day. Is what gets us motivated. So go grab you guys a late night snack or a early morning bakery item, you know, before you go back to work or whatever. So it was a fun time. So we'll have to do more of this. Nick and I, we talk about doing where we all just get a bunch of people and doing a throwdown where we all just cook. So we need to
We could
figure
do
out, Nick,
do a
how.
dinner party, right? So,
Ooh, what about LinkedIn's largest dinner party?
so one of the coolest things I always think, in Paris, they do this thing. It's called Dinner en Blanc, which is a dinner in white, and everybody gets dressed up in white, and they don't say where it's going to be until it starts, and thousands of people just show up to have dinner, and they're all in white, and they sit down these tables. Look it up if you ever get a chance. It's called Dinner en Blanc or Dinner in White, and it like it has to be a cool way to like redo that virtually.
Ooh, we gotta figure this out. So we gotta talk to Travis, Nick. We gotta put our minds together. We gotta do one of the largest LinkedIn eating events where we're all just eating.
There we go.
Yep,
We'll
we're
figure
gonna do
something
it,
out,
guys.
Morgan.
So,
Yep.
yep. Let us know if you're all in on this idea. Give us some thumbs up, comment, and we'll figure out a date. Maybe we should do like one of the biggest Friendsgiving meals. First choice.
There you go. It
Yeah.
just goes for 25 hours. No.
25 hours.
And it just like literally like goes on to the next set. And only one person rolls on from the previous show. So it's like dinner at a friend's, right?
That'll be pretty cool. That's
Yeah.
a good. Look at all these people; they're all in. So, hey, good time tonight. So, hey, follow Nick. You know, if you guys don't already know him, I think everyone here knows him. They're all Nick fans. So, thank you so much for being on Bottoms Up Perspective. And next week, I'm sure we'll do something again. We haven't figured that out yet. So, thanks for joining us. And Eldrick just posted our link to our website. It's bottomsupperspective.com. And feel free to comment below if you ever have any topics or ideas or things that you like to talk about. I'm an open book, and so is our core team, Eldrick, Jeremy, Jen. We love to hear it. Just let us know. So thank you guys for joining us for dinner, and have a good night. Later.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.